receiving a month's schooling each year, and at the end of 11 years of hard work, a yoke of oxen and 6 sheep, which brought me $84. I never spent the sum of $1 for pleasure, counting every penny from the time I was born till I was 21 years of age. I know what it is to travel weary miles and ask my fellow men to give me leave to toil. In the first month after I was 21 years of age, I went into the woods, drove a team, and cut mill logs. I rose in the morning before daylight and worked hard till after dark, and received the magnificent sum of $6 for the month's work. Each of these dollars looked as large to me as the moon looks tonight. Mr. Wilson determined never to lose an opportunity for self-culture or self-advancement. Few men knew so well the value of spare moments. He seized them as though they were gold, and would not let one pass until he had wrung from it every possibility. He managed to read 1,000 good books before he was 21. What a lesson for boys on a farm! When he left the farm, he started on foot for Natick, Mass, over 100 miles distance, to learn the cobbler's trade. He went through Boston that he might see Bunker Hill Monument and other historical landmarks. The whole trip cost him but $1.06. In a year, he was the head of a debating club at Natick. Before 8 years had passed, he made his great speech against slavery in the Massachusetts legislature. 12 years later, he stood shoulder to shoulder with the polished Sumner in Congress. With him, every occasion was a great occasion. He ground every circumstance of his life into material for success. Don't go about the town any longer in that outlandish rig. Let me give you an order on the store. Dress up a little, Horace. Horace greedily looked down on his clothes as if he had never before noticed how seedy they were, and replied, "You see, Mr. Sterrett, my father is on a new place, and I want to help him all I can." He had spent but $6 for personal expenses in 7 months, and was to receive $135 from Judge J. M. Sterrett of the Erie Gazette for substitute work. He retained but $15 and gave the rest to his father, with whom he had moved from Vermont to western Pennsylvania, and for whom he had camped out many a night to guard the sheep from wolves. He was nearly 21, and, although tall and gawky, with tow-colored hair, a pale face, and whining voice, he resolved to seek his fortune in New York City. Slinging his bundle of clothes on a stick over his shoulder, he walked 60 miles through the woods to Buffalo, rode on a canal boat to Albany, descended the Hudson in a barge, and reached New York just as the sun was rising. August 18, 1831. He found board over a saloon at $2.50 a week. His journey of 600 miles had cost him but $5. 4 days Horace wandered up and down the streets, going into scores of buildings and asking if they wanted a hand. But no was the invariable reply. His quaint appearance led many to think he was an escaped apprentice. One Sunday at his boarding place, he heard that printers were wanted at West's printing office. He was at the door at 5 o'clock Monday morning, and asked the foreman for a job at 7. The latter had no idea that a country greenhorn could set type for a polyglot testament on which help was needed, but said, "Fix up a case for him and we'll see if he can do anything." When the proprietor came in, he objected to the newcomer and told the foreman to let him go when his first day's work was done. That night, Horace showed a proof of the largest and most correct day's work that had then been done. In 10 years he was a partner in a small printing office. He founded the New Yorker, the best weekly paper in the United States, but it was not profitable. When Harrison was nominated for president in 1840, Greeley started the Log Cabin, which reached the then fabulous circulation of 90,000. But on this paper at a penny per copy, he made no money. His next venture was the New York Tribune, price 1 cent. To start it, he borrowed $1,000 and printed 5,000 copies of the first number. It was difficult to give them all away. He began with 600 subscribers and increased the list to 11,000 in 6 weeks. The demand for the Tribune grew faster than new machinery could be obtained to print it. It was a paper whose editor, whatever his mistakes, always tried to be right. James Gordon Bennett had made a failure of his New York Courier in 1825, of the Globe in 1832, and of the Pennsylvanian a little later, and was only known as a clever writer for the press, who had saved a few $100s by hard labor and strict economy for 14 years. In 1835, he asked Horace Greeley to join him in starting a new daily paper, the New York Herald. Greeley declined, but recommended 2 young printers who formed partnership with Bennett, and the Herald was started on May 6, 1835, with a cash capital to pay expenses for 10 days. Bennett hired a small cellar in Wall Street, furnished it with a chair and a desk composed of a plank supported by 2 barrels, and there, doing all the work except the printing, began the work of making a really great daily newspaper, a thing then unknown in America, as all its predecessors were party organs. Steadily, the young man struggled towards his ideal, giving the news fresh and crisp from an ever-widening area, until his paper was famous for giving the current story of the world as fully and quickly as any competitor, and often much more thoroughly and far more promptly. Neither labor nor expense was spared in obtaining prompt and reliable information on every topic of general interest. It was an uphill job, but its completion was finally marked by the opening at the corner of Broadway and Ann Street of the most complete newspaper establishment then known. One of the first things to attract the attention on entering George W. Child's private office in Philadelphia was this motto, which was the keynote of the success of a boy who started with no chance. Nihil sine labore. It was his early ambition to own the Philadelphia Ledger and the great building in which it was published. But how could a poor boy working for $2 a week ever hope to own such a great paper? However, he had great determination and indomitable energy, and as soon as he had saved a few $100s as a clerk in a bookstore, he began business as a publisher. He made great hits in some of the works he published, such as Kane's Arctic Expedition. He had a keen sense of what would please the public, and there seemed no end to his industry. In spite of the fact that the Ledger was losing money every day, his friends could not dissuade him from buying it, and in 1864, the dreams of his boyhood found fulfillment. He doubled the subscription price, lowered the advertising rates, to the astonishment of everybody, and the paper entered upon a career of remarkable prosperity, the profits sometimes amounting to over $400,000 a year. He always refused to lower the wages of his employees, even when every other establishment in Philadelphia was doing so. At a banquet in Lyons, nearly a century and a half ago, a discussion arose in regard to the meaning of a painting representing some scene in the mythology or history of Greece. Seeing that the discussion was growing warm, the host turned to one of the waiters and asked him to explain the picture. Greatly to the surprise of the company, The servant gave a clear, concise account of the whole subject, so plain and convincing that it at once set